Hello, welcome to the Azure Kubernetes deployment series part 8. In this series, we are going to learn how to deploy microservice-based applications into Azure Kubernetes using Helm chart. In the previous lab, we have already discussed how to deploy applications using Helm chart into AKS cluster. And in the lab, only we have deployed into a single environment, that is dev. But in this lab, we'll focus how to deploy it into multiple environments, such as dev, test, and prod. So we're going to learn how we can use the same Helm chart, but using different configuration uh, values.yaml files for each of the environment, how we can deploy into different environments. So here we'll configure different values.yaml file for for each of the environments. You can see here, if you go to the my VS Code, and we can see under the store Helm chart, if we see, we have this same Helm package, but here I have created three different values.yaml file. That is, one for dev, one is for test, and the other one is prod. So it is same for all the different Helm chart objects, or the cluster objects. So you can see here I have the configuration, object, order, that is another microservice, product microservice, rabbit message queue service, and storefront service. So these services has their own um, different dev, test, and prod configuration values.yaml file to deploy it into different environments. So here, in order to do that, I have in my uh, Azure DevOps, you can see I have created three different environments. If you go to the pipeline and under the project, my project, you can see here we have these three different environments: dev, prod, test, and we can provide whatever access for this environment. We can provide, like, who has the permission to deploy, or while running the pipeline, who can approve that pipeline to deploy into that respective environments. So that we can do here by using, suppose, using the security, you can provide the access. We can add the user who can get access to those environments. The next thing is, also I have created um, additional libraries, I mean group variables, you can see here, that is dev, prod, and test. So these are the environment specific variable group. In this case, I just defined only one variable, that is namespace, because in while creating multiple environments like dev, test, or prod, or UAT, in enterprise based applications, usually we use different subscription itself. Like for dev, there will be a different subscription, Azure subscription, I mean, and for test also there will be separate Azure subscription, and for production there should be another subscription. Or in some cases, we can also share the same subscription with dev, test, or UAT, but production environment should be in a different and isolated subscription. But in my case, I have only one subscription, and also I am trying to deploy all these environments in the same cluster, because I don't want to create multiple cluster, because it will be there will be cost for creating multiple cluster in Azure. So in order to avoid that, I am using the same cluster, and in that same cluster, I am going to deploy or create all the environments. So how I can do that is just to create multiple namespaces. So using namespaces, I can segregate or isolate my environments, dev, test, and prod. So in my cluster, I have created three different namespaces. So one is dev. Similarly, we can see I have a test, namespace test, and the other one is prod. So I have also a prod namespace. So I want to create the environments using um, Kubernetes namespaces. Okay, so next, if we will go to the GitHub, you can see here um, how we can create our namespaces. Um, so in order to create the infrastructure, because since it takes some time, I just run this script here. So this script basically it will help in deploying the infrastructure. You can see under infra, I have Azure CLI, and this is the script. So it will create the resource group and Azure Content Registry and cluster, AKS cluster. Okay, so using that, I have already done that. So we can see in my previous command here, you can see I have just run this one and it created all this uh, infrastructure. Okay, so once that is done, I try to uh, access the cluster. So for that, I have just run this command Azure AKS get credential. So I have used these variables, the name of the resource group and the AKS cluster to which I'm going to um, connect. So I just run this one, and then I have created a alias that is for kubectl. I am using k, and using that I'm just creating this namespaces, that is kubectl create namespace dev. Similarly, kubectl create namespace test and prod as well. Okay, so that way I have done. You can see all this I have done here. It is created successfully. I mean, k create namespace dev. It created the namespace dev successfully. Similarly, it created all these things, and I'm able to access. If I just did k get all, I'm able to access something from the cluster. Okay, then after doing this, I need to so once the infrastructure is ready, then I need to make ready our Docker images into the Azure Container Registry, and also we are storing our Helm chart in the Azure Container Registry. Then from there, the deployment pipeline, it will refer that Docker images and the Helm chart from the Azure Content Registry and deploy it into the cluster, respective environments using the namespace. Okay, so for that, I have already implemented these pipelines. You can see here, I have the config pipeline, order pipeline, product pipeline, rabbit message queue pipeline, and storefront pipeline. So if we see one of these pipeline order pipeline, here I'm just referring the variable group. This is Kubernetes common variable group, that is I have already defined in the library. You can see in my library, if we go here, we can see I have this library, and under this, what are the common thing that is common to all the environments I have kept here. I mean, this Azure Content Registry, service connection, cluster name, resource group name, service connection, all these things. Okay, so these are common to this, so we can refer here, and there is some other variables I have just defined here. And in this pipeline, one stage that used to build the application and create the Docker image and push it into the Azure Content Registry. The second stage is it will push that Helm chart. That is nothing our Helm chart, store Helm chart. This it will try to push it into the uh, ACR, and it only push only the order Helm chart. Okay, not all charts are is available in store Helm chart. Then the deploy part, I have, you can see I have created three different stages here: dev deploy, test deploy, and prod deploy. Okay, so this dev deploy, that it will start only when the Helm package push is done into the Azure Content Registry. That means it depends upon Helm chart that should be available in ACR. Then in that deploy, I'm just referring the Kubernetes dev variable group. So here it will fetch the namespace that is specific to the dev environment. We can see here I'm referring the namespace. So the namespace is nothing. It is the cluster, AKS cluster dev namespace. Okay, and here I'm passing another environment variable that is called environment. So name is dev. Similarly, here if we see the test deployment, it depends upon the dev deployment. I means if dev is success, then it will start deploying into the test environment. Okay, and I'm using the group variable test here, and here you can see here I'm using the environment test. and the namespace it will take from the variable group. It is also test. Okay. Next, then the de prod deployment. It depends upon the test deployment. If test deployment success, then it will start deploying into prod deployment. And in this case, I'm using the prod variable group, and I'm passing here the environment as prod. Okay, and the namespace will be prod. It will take from the prod environment. Okay, so this is defined for all the pipeline. But if we see here rabbit message queue, we don't have any build Docker image, because we are directly referring it from the image. We are directly referring it from the Azure Microsoft Container Registry. Okay, so for that we are not including any build and Docker push in stage here. Okay, now I have already run these pipelines as well, because it takes a lot of time. So if you see, I have already deployed the uh, infra, sorry, the config part. You can see the config pipeline. So this config pipeline, it will deploy to dev, test, as well as to prod. And here it will only, um, if we can go to the configuration, here you can see only I have this config map YAML file, and here this is no use, because it is same for all the information, this configuration. But if any changes, we can mention here. If any changes, we can mention here, so that it will override. Okay, so where it will override this, so when it is trying to deploy, it will refer this environment specific values.yaml file. So that happening, you can see if we go to the deploy, I have a deploy YAML file here, so that it will refer from here. If you see, if you can go here, you can see I'm calling this deploy YAML while I'm deploying to any of the environment. You can see here I'm now trying to deploy into dev environment, so I'm just calling here deploy YAML. Okay, and I'm passing this parameters, and here I'm passing dev environment. So it will come to this deploy pipeline, I mean template pipeline, and the environment is dev. So if you go to this, you can see what it's doing is, while deploying this helm, calling the, I mean the using the helm task, helm replace task, it is referring this values.yaml. You can see here it is referring the environment, maybe it may be dev, test, and prod. So it will, whatever we are passing here, it will take that and refer to that particular values.yaml file. I mean, let it be environment specific values.yaml file. Okay, so it will use that and deploy. So here it will take any of these depending upon the environment. Either it will be dev values.yaml, prod values.yaml, or test values.yaml. Okay, and also we are, what I'm doing, because we are doing fully automate. Okay, so while we are building our application, it will automatically trigger that this pipeline, and automatically build the application and create the Docker image. Okay, so the Docker image should take the latest image that what we created through the pipeline, I mean the build pipeline. So for that we are using image tag. Okay, so we are also passing the image tag as a parameter, and it will replace that environment specific values.yaml file with a new tag. Okay, so it will always refer to the new build. So for that, this set command I'm using here to replace the Docker image uh, tag with the build id. Okay, so this build id we are passing from the while calling this pipeline. Okay, you can see here, for example, order, right? So we have this image tag and we are passing here. Okay, so it will come to this, sorry, here it will come to this image tag, it will come to the deploy, and here it will replace with, with that tag. Okay, in the values.yaml file. Okay, so this is how it is dynamically referring to the new image, and also depending upon the environment, it will refer that specific environment specific values.yaml, and it will deploy. So what is the need, how we can test, why you need this different values.yaml file for different environment? So this is where we want to customize it. I mean, for example, suppose for dev environment we want one replica, I mean we want only one instance of the pod to be run, and for test we suppose we want two replicas. Okay, for example, yeah, so two replicas suppose you want here in test environment, and prod suppose we want three. It can be anything just for to show it how it is reflecting. I mean, how the deployment works and how it is deployed into different environment to showcase it. I just mentioned for dev the replica is 1, and for test the replica is 2, and prod it is 3. But we can change anything like the limits, memory, okay, anything that we can change specific to any of the environment. So that's why the dev YAML file, it is nothing, it is the configuration for that particular environment. So we can pass any parameter, we can change it, and it will be deployed depending upon the environment. And it will take it dynamically depending upon the environment. It will choose the specific values.yaml file, and it will deploy into that environment. Okay, so if you can see, uh, you can see here for configuration, I have these 4 stages. So one is just to, in configuration, we are not creating any Docker images. So there is no Docker build and push stage. Only we are the Helm package we are pushing. So the Helm package for configuration is this one. This is the Helm package. So this part it will push to the ACR, and we have the dev deployment, test deployment, and prod deployment. Okay. Similarly, for rabbit message queue, if you can see there, here also we don't have any Docker build. We are directly referring the image from the Azure, sorry, Microsoft content registry. We can see, I can show that if you go to rabbit message queue, and you can see dev value, you can see the repository. Okay, prod value. Yeah, so here if you see, okay, so yeah, so you can see this is the tag, this is the repository name, and this is the tag. Okay, and here we are referring from the Microsoft content registry. So we are not building and pushing it to Azure content registry. We are directly referring from Microsoft uh, content registry. Okay, okay, so that also deployed. And in case of order and product, also the storefront, we can see we have 5 stages. So we are building the Docker images and pushing it into the content registry, and also uh, pushing the respective Helm chart and deploying it to the dev, test, and prod environment. It is same for prod as well. Okay, and also same for the order pipeline as well. Okay, now if we go to our cluster, Azure portal, here I have, you can see the pipeline already pushed. This is our container registry. Okay, so in container registry, if you go to repository, you can see these are 3 our different images that we created and pushed. With this, you can see the tag is 487, for prod it is 491, and for storefront it is 492. And these are the packages. Okay, Helm package. Okay, if you go, you can see the package here. Okay, this is the package, and we can refer it in our ML file with this. Okay, yeah, so that is done, and it is deployed everything properly. Now you need to check whether it is our environments are deployed properly or not. How we can do that is, let just get the pod. Let's get the pod from dev environment. You can see here in our dev values, the replica is 1. Okay, I have mentioned replica 1. So for each of these I mean services, it created 1 pod for each. Okay, but if we see, if we use the namespace test, you can see we have 2 pod for each. Okay, you can see here. And similarly for prod, you can see here there are three for each service. There are 3 pods are created. Okay, so this is environment specific. You mean depending upon our requirement, we can just change any configuration values, maybe the replica or memory or anything else. Okay, or even the type of our service type. It may be cluster IP, or we can change also to node type or load balancer. Okay, so if it is product, then we can make it load balancer. But if it is dev or stage or test, then in that case we can keep it as a node port. So this way we can configure it. Okay. Now, in order to check it, whether suppose in order to test how it happening, let me change one of these service. Okay. For example, in application, let me change the front end application. Let me do a little modification here. Simply welcome. Okay. And let me just um, browse this application first. Okay. So in order to that, we have to I would okay get SVC. Let try get it from the dev environment. Okay, you can see here this is my public IP. Let me call this. We can also browse it. We can see here it shows controls of pet store. Okay, now let me do one thing. Let me change this one. This modify this. Okay, now let me commit this. Okay, let's see it. So it should the code will be reflected into the Git repository. Okay, then it should start my pipeline here storefront. If you see, I think it got committed. It, yeah, it started now. You can see here my pipeline started. Okay, so this storefront pipeline now started. It will take some time. Yeah, now you can see the deployment is done successfully. You can go to the VS Code and you can see like how just verify whether it is deployed or not. So let get the service, um, get the service from namespace. For example, let's check the fraud environment. You can see here the public IP is 74177.178.163. Now let's do a call to this. 80. You can see here the difference. The application, whatever we modified, it's reflected. It is welcome and context of store. So, uh, so it works as I mean automatically when we modify the application. It trigger the pipeline and deploy the changes into all the environments. Okay, so here if you see right, uh, we can uh, for deploying to different stages, right? We can also add the um, permission like approval. Okay, so if you want to once it is deployed into dev, then you can add the approval for uh, to deploy into test and similarly for prod. Okay, so that we can do. So that's all for today. So next lab we will learn how to use customize to deploy into different environments. And till then, bye bye. Thank you.